Nikola Jokic just had the 10 greatest game stretch in NBA history. No one's ever had a better 10 games in the history of professional basketball played and tracked at a modern level than Nikola Jokic. We're going to talk about it today on the Mile High Hoops podcast with me, Jake Shapiro. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe to all our content on YouTube, Denver Sports. That is the place. We will cover you with everything. And I want to talk about what not only Jokic has been doing, but the Denver Nuggets over the last 5 games, powered by Jokic, go on a 5-game home win streak, and they're right back in the picture. 7-3 start. They're 4th in the West the last time I checked. Sole possession of 4th. There's some big games tonight in the NBA, and the Nuggets have off till Friday. But that's what they started their championship season. And I said over and over on this podcast, if the Denver Nuggets get 2 or 3 of those young players, just 2 of those young players to contribute on a real deal NBA level, they're probably going to win the title. So far through 10 games, and especially over the last 5 at home, the Nuggets look like they're getting 3, not just 2, of those young players to step up, and this is what they're doing with Jamal Murray missing some time, Aaron Gordon missing some time, and they look real. The thing is, I want to see it out on the road. They've got 3 games on the road next week, over the weekend and into early next week. New Orleans, Memphis, and Memphis. And role players generally in the NBA struggle a little bit more on the road than they do at home. All of this to say that Nikola Jokic has had to do more than normal because of the injuries to Jamal and Aaron, where they've missed some time, and the fact that the Nuggets are trying to figure out some things with some guys who, frankly, just have not played a lot of NBA minutes. Some guys like Christian, yeah, definitely, and you see the blossom in Christian, and that's something we need to chat about at some point here soon. But Nikola's been tasked with more. And there was part of me that thought, hey, you know, the Nuggets way out of what they're going to struggle with this season that we all thought they're going to struggle with is simply, what if Nikola does more? It just seemed like a ridiculous notion, right? Because he's done so much the last couple of years. And I don't think anyone actually thought Nikola could get any better somehow, right? Because the last 4 years have been 4 of the best years in the history of basketball by anyone. And you just look at the age, you look at the miles on his body, you thought, okay, maybe they rest him a little bit. They save his legs. They save the juice for later on in the season. 0-2 start. Nikola Jokic goes, I need to be Steph Curry. I also need to be Michael Jordan. I also, at the same time, need to be Magic Johnson. And somehow he's doing all of those things. And it's ridiculous. So I'm just going to give you Nikola Jokic's stats real quick through 10 games. And I know reading stats is not great audio, but there's a point to it. So Nikola, through 10 games, points-wise, scored 297 points. Just raw numbers. Rebounds, 137 rebounds. Assists, 117 assists. Raw numbers, really easy to deal with, right? Through 10 games. So he's averaging, over 10 in every category. Looks great. Almost 30 points a game. He's leading the league in points. He's leading the league in rebounds. Or he's leading the league in rebounds and assists, and he's very close in points. Do you know how many players in NBA history have had at least 295 points, 137 rebounds, and 115 assists in any 10 games? 1. His name is Nikola Jokic, and he's done it over the last couple games. Have it right in front of me. It's insane. And, obviously, the start to, the stretch to start a season has been fantastic. But to share the fact that this isn't just the start to the season, this is at any point in any season, no one has done better than this. I think that's pretty key to point out. I'm not going to say it's the best 10-game stretch in the history of the NBA, considering all the other factors, big games. We're talking about November basketball here. There have been finals runs that have been, unbelievable for a 10-game stretch. But in terms of statistics, and the 3 most important basketball statistics we use across all levels of the sport, no one has had a 10 games that Nikola Jokic has had. And Nikola went as far to call his numbers not great, just good.
I mean, of course, I have a good stretch right now. I think the last the beginning of the season, I think I'm playing really good, and I hope that I can continue to play like this. The team is something that putting me in the kind of in a spotlight, and I appreciate all the guys who are kind of they're on the right spot. They're the right spot. They're patient. They are kind of doing small things, and just because. I'm putting the not great, good numbers. It's not just me, there is a lot of people behind me.
I shot that video on Sunday, and frankly, I was kind of chuckling to myself. It's like, wow, our humble giant of a man cannot even call himself great in this situation where he had one of the best games of his career on Sunday. So by game score, which is a metric that Basketball Reference uses to evaluate games, it's created by John Hollinger, former general manager of the Memphis Grizzlies. Nikola's game on Sunday against Dallas in the Nuggets 122-120 win. He goes for 37 points, 18 rebounds, and 15 assists. That equates to a 44.8 game score. And I know that number doesn't mean anything to you right now. Basically, the way to think about it is if you have a 10-point game score, you have an average game. If you have a 40-point game score, similar to points, 40 points in a game is fantastic. 40 points is fantastic. So Nikola in his NBA career has had, just to put this in perspective, 16, including the postseason, 16 different instances of a 40-point game score. On Sunday was his 7th best game all time by game score in his career, 44.8. So the games that come above that, number 6 was in 2018, he had a 35-point, 11 rebound, 11 assist performance against Phoenix. He did not miss a single shot. Triple-double, no missed shots, right? His 5th best of his career was that unbelievable Nuggets-Clippers game I talk about that goes into overtime with the Aaron Gordon shot at the buzzer to put it into overtime. He had 40 and a triple-double that night, 17 and 10. Nikola's only game, there's 2 games actually on this list above, 4 and 3 regular season games against Washington and Sacramento. He didn't get triple-doubles in, but 42 points and 50 points in those games on high-efficiency shooting. His 2nd best game of all time, another contest against the Clippers. He likes to kill the Clippers. And then his top game of all time, just to put this in perspective of how good he was on Sunday. So this is a 48.7 game score, just slightly above where he was on Sunday. 46 points, 12 rebounds, 11 assists on just 4 missed shots and 5 turnovers. So we're talking about one of Nikola Jokic's best games of his career that took place on Sunday. And I do want you to comment below, share with me what you believe to be Nikola's best game of his career. I still go towards that Clippers game that went into overtime with the Aaron Gordon bucket. I just thought he was at the peak of his powers that night. But what I saw on Sunday was the same level, completely commanding that game. And I'm sitting there, and I just love this. I've had a couple moments like this, guys, where, I love basketball. I love hoop. Like, I'm not going to hide it. I'm a fan of the game. And, I try not to be a fan because it's my job to be serious and take this seriously. I really do. But sometimes taking it seriously means geeking out over how cool something on the court is. So I'm sitting there with Matt Brooks, who works for the Nuggets, who's a great guy, and Andy Bailey, who's a friend of mine from Bleacher Report, and it's the 3 of us, and we all love basketball, just love it. And, we're the nerds that are talking about, oh, my God, what a good screen. Second half of that game's rolling around, and Luka is just, hitting shot after shot. Kyrie has these 2 absurd plays late in that game where he never dribbles the ball. The best ball handler I've ever seen in my life does not dribble the ball. He triple threat, fakes his way into shots because he knows if he puts the ball down on the floor, the double team is coming. He had 3 misses until the very end of the game where he missed his last 2 shots thanks to amazing defense from Peyton Watson and Christian Brown. But Kyrie is just fully in his bag. Jokic after the game called him maybe one of the most skilled players in the history of the league, which is kind of the common thought among a lot of people. I've pushed back on that a couple times because I think more goes into skill than just ball handling and shooting, but I do agree that Kyrie's obviously unbelievable. So you have Kyrie just going at it. And then you have Jamal, who not having a great game, coming off the injury, second game back, goes for 8 points and I think like 4 or 5 assists in the fourth quarter alone. Hitting some big shots, calling timeout in the face of the Mavericks bench. And on top of it, you have Jokic just commanding the game. And I'm geeking out because you're watching high-level basketball. The shot making is absurd. The defense, the ideas from the coaches, you're just seeing these two teams go at it. And I'm not going to be the guy that says, oh, it was like a postseason game very early on, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I don't believe that. Like, the atmosphere was not that. But it was so fun to watch. It felt like it was almost like a game of horse where you're trying to one-up each other back and forth, and Jamal and Kyrie had this thing going, and the Nuggets were trying to solve Kyrie, and the Mavs were just throwing everything they had at Jokic. And granted, this matchup took place without Derek Lively and PJ Washington, and for the Nuggets, Aaron Gordon. So this isn't the most telling matchup of, per se, what this matchup will be later on this season when these teams both hope to meet each other playing for the Western Conference Final, because the Mavs got there last year and won, and the Nuggets, that's their, goal. But it was just so fun to see. And I think the thing I took away from it, one of the things, there's many things I took away from it, but one of the things I took away from it was there's a far cry from being the MVP favorite coming into the year, like Luka Doncic, and the narrative and all the belief that Luka was going to be the best player in the world this year. I thought that too. I had Luka winning the MVP on this podcast going into the year. The narrative, everything kind of building right after the finals appearance. And I do truly think he's one of the 3 best players in the league. And he's fantastic. He's going to go down as one of the top 100 basketball players of all time, maybe top 50. I don't know. It's way too early in his career to do that. But there's a difference between being an MVP favorite and a 3-time winner of the MVP award. And there's a reason why, after 10 games, the new favorite for the NBA MVP, according to the bookmakers, is Nikola Jokic. And yeah, there are some people that have done some way too early MVP stuff. I personally do not want to do MVP stuff in November for a season that is 82 games long and is 10 games done, especially for how toxic this conversation has gotten over the last couple of years. But it's my job to cover things, and Michael Malone brought up the MVP conversation.
I would assume that after tonight's performance, he'll probably be like 5th in the MVP voting early in the season. So he's just got to do more for us because what he's doing isn't been noticed by everybody outside of this Rocky Mountain empire. But 37, 15, and 18, 3 steals, the number of pick and rolls that he guarded tonight, the minutes that he played. 38 is actually a good number. I'm pretty happy about that. We kept him under 40. But no, on a serious note, just incredible. We're all running out of words, adjectives, and ways to describe his greatness and his impact. And I think the simple way to say that, he's the best player in the world. That's the best way you can say it, in my opinion.
So here we are, talking MVPs early on in the year. And I'm not going to tell you who the MVP of the season is so far. It's obviously Jokic. It's not a conversation worth having. To me, what's far more interesting is something Malone said later. Not going to show that clip, but he essentially was talking about it's unsustainable for me to play Nikola Jokic 38, 39, 40 minutes a night this early on in the season. While at the same time making the joke of Nikola can play this many minutes. Have you seen how much this guy gets paid? So while I'm not worried about it on a game-to-game basis how much Jokic plays, especially when you consider the fact that everyone on the Nuggets ran out of gas besides Jokic and besides Jamal Murray. Yeah, he kind of ran out of the gas in the second half of Game 7 last year, but Jokic never ran out of gas. So I'm not worried about Jokic's legs per se. But you have seen his three-point shot fall off in the second half of seasons the last couple years, and for me, that might be the wrist, that might be the legs, that might be something. He's found other ways around it because he's such a great basketball player. But I do think that the Nuggets need to deepen their rotation. I talked about it a couple weeks ago on this podcast. I think they need to tap into Vlatko Čančar. They need to do some things to deepen that rotation, go back to Dario Saric. And right now it's a little tough because Aaron's not around taking up 30 minutes a game. And you've had to rely on Zeke Naji, who has looked very up and down. Atrocious on Sunday, but has had decent spells here and there. So the Nuggets are going to need to find a way to take some of the burden off of Jokic, because while he just had the best 10-game stretch in NBA history, the Nuggets have barely won some of these games, and you don't want it to be the barometer for your best player to have the best 10-game stretch in NBA history continuously for you to have to be able to win and be one of the better teams in the West. So Nikola did what was needed, and that's what MVPs do. And now it's on the Nuggets to turn around and take some of the pressure off Nikola over the next couple games. And that's what I'm interested in seeing out in Memphis and out against New Orleans. These teams have had bad starts. They're very banged up. And if the Nuggets can find a way to keep Nikola's number under 30, 29, 28 even, if he doesn't have to play that final stretch, and the young guys can really go out on the road and provide some big kick. And I've loved what I've seen out of Porter, particularly in that Dallas game where, you know, he looks great in the first half, and the Nuggets just don't use him in the second half. And all of a sudden he's taking a shot with 6 seconds left for game, and he hits it on top of the fact that he has a huge defensive rotation and rebound moments before. If this can be the Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. show for the next 3 games, I'm going to be very excited. I'll talk about it on the next podcast a little bit. But I am a little bit worried about Jokic long-term this year because of the burden that's been placed on him and the amount of work he's had to do very early on. The thing is, we are watching arguably the 5th, 4th best, 3rd best basketball player of all time at the absolute peak of his power. And I don't want you guys to take it for granted. I certainly don't. I try to go to as many Nuggets games, and granted, it's my job to go to Nuggets games, but sometimes I don't have to go for work. Like, I don't always have to go. And those times I try to take my wife or, you know, a friend, because you don't know what you're going to see. And on Sunday, one of my best friends went to the game. He was very glad he went to that game. That Clipper game I keep talking about, I took my wife to. I wasn't working that night. One of the most glad decisions I've had. Same with that Philadelphia comeback a couple years ago with Joel Embiid actually playing against the Nuggets and them coming back from plus 20 in the 4th quarter. So if you have an opportunity to go to a Nuggets game this year with the way Jokic is playing, I want you to say yes, because you can tell your kids, you can tell your grandkids that you saw this guy at the absolute peak of his game, and you'll be able to compare basketball players for the rest of your life to go, did that guy control the game the way this guy does? Maybe there'll be someone that comes along that's even better at controlling the game. But I'll tell you what was fun on Sunday for me. Spencer Dinwiddie was the best college basketball player I've ever seen. In person, day to day, you know, on a regular basis. And I know there's been better college basketball players. Like, there's one currently in Boulder that's better, Danny Manning, an assistant coach for the Colorado Buffaloes. But in terms of seeing them play live and seeing the in-game action, I got to see a lot of Spencer's college career very up close. So it was very fun for me seeing who I consider to be one of the best college basketball players I've ever seen and the best NBA basketball player I've ever seen go back and forth on Sunday, because Spencer's on the Dallas bench, and Spencer's at a very different point in his career right now, but just a cool moment. And I love that. You know, you see the eras blending and the generations blending in basketball. You know, I grew up watching LeBron James so much, and, you know, to have the last couple of years where LeBron and Jokic have gone at each other in the playoffs and that passing of the torch in a way and the respect that goes amongst them, it's really cool to see. And I think Jokic still is not respected and talked about enough. I'm not going to be the guy that pines for it. Like, that's just not my MO. Because the thing is, I respect him and talk about him enough, and I don't frankly care what everyone else does. To me, he's one of the most interesting athletes of all time. He's one of the best athletes of all time. And I frankly cannot get enough of watching this guy play. And I hope for you guys, and if you've made it this far in this podcast, like and subscribe, obviously, You obviously care a lot about this Denver Nuggets team, and you care about Nikola Jokic. So my homework for you, I hate to give you homework, but I am literally a college professor, is next time the Nuggets play, maybe it's the next home game you go to, or maybe you're watching on TV. Try to look for something in Jokic's game or something that he does that you haven't seen before, that you just maybe weren't paying attention to. Just like look for all the little things, because that's what makes the totality of a player great, is all the little things they do. And on Sunday, one of the things I noticed was just Jokic on the bench, and he calls plays often, but he's yelling at everyone, crossing his hands, barking, saying, do this, do that, right? Jamal's sitting next to him having a conversation with someone over Jokic's shoulder. And then I think it hits Jamal what Jokic is saying. And Jamal's like chokes on his Gatorade bottle and just starts laughing. Because I think Jamal even realized how ridiculous it was that Nikola was talking about. And you saw it a little bit in that Minnesota game where Anthony Edwards said Nikola knew the plays before we knew the plays. We're watching a genius. Appreciate it. So that's my spiel for today. Thank you for listening to the Mile High Hoops podcast with me, Jake Shapiro. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you check out all my work on denversports.com. We will talk to you on Thursday previewing a Nuggets road trip after their 5-game winning